Good morning. It's day 2 of getting my life back together. Day 1 was absolutely spectacular. I had no sweets at all yesterday. I got all my stuff done on my to-do list. It was organized, and I went to my first yoga class, which was fantastic. And I meditated in the evening, so I started my meditation practice again, and I got 7.5 hours of sleep. So I feel fantastic. So today is a new day. I'm gonna cycle on my bike this morning over to Panera Bread, and I'm gonna get myself organized, finally finish that bloody dead time planner, and then we'll just see where the day takes us after that. Okay, so I'm back at the apartment, and I'm really looking forward to this video today. I do have some coffee. Panera Bread gives you free refills, so on my way out I got myself some decaf. So gonna get that all on the go. Lovely jubbly. Alright, so in episode 3 of A Polyglot's Journey, we looked at a couple things. We summarized some steps. Step 1 was to sort of define our objective and our goal. Step 2 was to identify the challenges that we're going to be facing. What are the particular things that we need to overcome? And then step 3, we said we were going to kind of come back to, but we talked about how will we overcome those challenges, right? So we talked briefly. One thing is dead time. That was a major thing. The second thing is I said that having my mornings is something that gives me a tremendous amount of comfort, and I suppose confidence in my process, because that's time that is generally guaranteed to me. Usually nothing obligatory, such as, teaching classes or meetings or appointments. Nothing's happening before 8:30 usually. So by starting at 5:30, I guarantee myself several hours of dedicated time every day. And the third thing was the technique of tying activities to specific changes in my day, to specific parts of the day, as opposed to a time schedule, right? So we talked a little bit about that. So today, I want to really finally break out the finished dead time planner. So this was our original dead time planner that was sort of blank, and in case you guys missed it, I gave you guys access to this for free. So all you have to do is go to the link on the screen or the description, and you can request access, and I'll grant it to everybody. I'm really excited. I've had about 25 people request access to the document, so I'm really excited that some of you guys are using the dead time planner that I provided. But again, you could make your own. I just did this because I love designing tools that could be useful, and I wanted to create something that would immediately provide some value, right? So this will save you a ton of time. Now, let's take a look at my finished dead time planner. Okay, so I'm going to take you guys through this in quite a bit of detail. So let's just start. So as you can tell, you'll see that, again, I have 2 time columns, right? This is because for many people, Monday through Friday is going to be on a slightly different time schedule than the weekends, perhaps, unless you work on the weekends. Again, I couldn't make something that would be perfect for everybody. At least this provides you a lot more flexibility than if we just had one fixed time column for the whole week. And I left it blank, and I also used dotted lines. The reason for that was so that you get to decide, right? Do you want to do 30-minute time blocks? Do you want to do 1-hour time blocks? Or do you want to do what I did which is create time blocks that are specific. So one of my blocks, the very first one you'll see is an hour and a half, right? The second one is 1 hour. That's because that's how I've chosen to break up those activities. So I've chosen time blocks based on roughly how long each sort of block will tend to take. Now, also for simplicity's sake, you'll notice that I've kept mine consistent throughout the week. Again, it's simplicity's sake. We'll talk about the pros and cons to that, and then you'll see my weekend is on a totally different schedule. So let's break down what this looks like. So the things with a nice blue border, sky blue is my favorite color. That's also why my mug is more or less a nice, lovely sky blue. I love it. So the ones that have just a blue border, so let's look at the things: bike ride, lunch, cooking, dinner. That means dead time, okay? So that's time that I have identified. Remember, I told you the first step is simply to fill out this schedule to identify where your dead time is. So you don't need to fill out what you're going to do in it. All you need to do is find the things that are consistent in your day, such as working, right? So you'll see that I have in orange all my working hours, more or less, right? So 8 to 10, right? Then we have 10 to 11. That's because normally I'm teaching classes from 8 to 10, 10 to 11. Sometimes I have classes, sometimes I do other work. And then also 12:30 to 5. Okay, so this is almost the same amount of hours as a typical work day. I just have a slightly longer sort of lunch period if you count the bike ride as well. But this is a pretty standard schedule, and I did this deliberately. I've decided to set my life up in a way that will sort of emulate or be similar to most of you guys, perhaps. I could choose to do this totally differently, but I want this to be relatable. Some of my story and my journey will not be relatable, right? Because I am, I'd say, probably a very advanced polyglot. I've been doing this a very long time, and I also have a fairly flexible lifestyle that I've built myself. But I want this to be as relatable as possible. So that's why I've set this up in a way that's similar to a lot of people's schedules. So go to work at 8, right? Finish work at 5, right? I have a commute. I have a 45-minute commute there and back on a bicycle. Anyway, so I've identified my working hours in orange. And then in blue, I've identified my dead time hours. Now, there are 2 more categories. You'll see that there are some blue boxes that have a dotted border around them. That's for dedicated study time. Okay, so dedicated study time has that sort of nice dotted border around it. And then green is pleasure time. Okay, time that is just for my own pleasure, whatever I'd like to do. And then you'll notice on the weekend, some of those hours have kind of funny patterns, and that's because I decided to just keep those flexible. Those hours, I decided I'm not even going to bother committing anything to it. In all likelihood, I'll probably end up using those hours productively, but maybe I'll go to lunch with somebody. You know, maybe I will decide to do an afternoon yoga class, who knows? So those are hours that really are pretty unpredictable. So now let's kind of break it down in detail. So as you guys know, I tend to start the day at 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes, you know, a bit later. I'm always up at 5:30, but normally I'm actually ready to start the day at 5:30. So as I've said, I've dedicated those hours to dedicated study time. So as of now, this is important. This is part of my process. I literally have not figured out what I will do yet. This is totally authentic. I am showing you guys as I figure this out, right? So I don't know what I'll do yet, but I decided I would spend the first hour and a half on one thing and the second hour after that on something else. That's why there are 2 blocks. Then I go to work. So I usually teach classes from 8 until 10. And then again, sometimes I have another class at 10 to 11. Sometimes I'll be doing other stuff. And then I ride somewhere. So then I'll typically ride my bike to a coffee shop where I can go and work. So on the bike ride, I listen to something, right? So we know that activity is going to be listening. So we'll talk about what. So we have some dead time for 45 minutes on the commute. That's a lot of time, right? And then I have my lunch hour. So I take about 30 minutes for lunch since I just spent 45 minutes riding my bike. I could take longer, but again, I want this to be somewhat close to your guys' schedule. So lunch is dead time, right? Because there are things I can do while I'm eating lunch. Then I'm going to work for another, 4.5 hours. And then I have the return commute, right? Another 45 minutes of time. And then you'll notice that some of these things, there's kind of like a gap. So if you take a look at 11 to 11:45 for the bike ride, and then it jumps to 12 o'clock. That's just me keeping it flexible. That's me allowing myself some leeway, because who knows? Maybe I'll get there later. Maybe I'll need 15 minutes to order a coffee, get myself set up. So the whole point of this schedule is it's a guide and it's flexible, which is the key. Remember, I've said this in many videos. If you're not flexible, you have to be strict to a degree. This is our structure. But you cannot be rigid to the point where you're likely to just not follow it. So I've done this in a very specific way to keep it flexible.